Hello guys, welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know I have not been posting much lately, but I'm so sorry. But here I am back with a new YouTube video for you guys only, and for me. Like even I can revise from the video. Never mind, leave that. So yeah, so this is we today are going to talk about aggregate demand and aggregate supply analysis. So this is a topic for AS level, but also the IGCSE students and the A level students can watch this video so that they can revise their topics. Obviously, like that's what the video is for. Never mind. So I will be posting three parts to this video. So stay tuned for those parts also. And let's get into the video. Like, what are we waiting for? Before that, you please go view my channel and also drop a comment if you like the way I talk or something. Anything like anything you like that you like about me or the video, or like even the format or the editing and all of that, dot dot dot, etc. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. And I know I said this for the second time, but okay. So in this whole sequel or three-part sequel, we are going to learn about aggregate demand, aggregate supply, microeconomic equilibrium and disequilibrium, and obviously, like we always do on a channel, we solve few questions. Okay, so let's get into the first part, which is only going to be about aggregate demand. So part one, aggregate demand. So aggregate demand, what is aggregate demand? Okay, so as the name suggests, aggregate and demand. Demand is basically, you all know what demand is, demand and supply. So aggregate demand is basically the total demand of goods and services in an economy. So over here, instead of just talking about demand, you're talking about demand as a whole. As a whole economy. Like for example, if China is calculating its demand in the whole economy, then it would be calculating its aggregate demand. Okay, at a given price. So this is very important, at a given price in that specific time period. Okay, so this is very important at a given price and in a specific time period, because that's how GDP is not GDP, aggregate demand is calculated. So so in the calculations, so aggregate demand is basically real GDP. Okay, which is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, so what are these? So when you're calculating the aggregate demand, it should be at a specific price, it should be at a specific time. Okay, so specific time basically means like during a economic recession or during a economic growth. So that is basically a specific time. Okay, so the C means the consumption, the I means the investment, the G means the government spending, the X minus M basically means the net export. So exports minus import. So the total export and the total import. So you find the difference between it, export minus import, which gives you X minus M. Okay. So four parts components of a these are the four components of an aggregate demand, which is consumption being the most bet more proportion of consumption is calculated when we are calculating aggregate demand. The consumption, investment, government spending, and net export, four components. So what is consumption, or what are the factors that affect consumption very much? Okay, so we are going to talk about that. So first is total spending by, so what is consumption to start with? So consumption is basically the total spending by a household to satisfy its needs or want. Okay, so for example, if I'm going shopping for grocery and I'm buying something like for example 1 kg of vegetables and 1 kg of fruit. Okay, so that's my total spending that I spent. Okay, so fruits and vegetable total cost was, for example, 100 rupees, 100 Indian rupees. Okay, so that's my total spending. Okay, just to satisfy my needs and wants. Basically, my needs and wants are food over here, and Yeah, obviously everyone needs food, like to survive in the, never mind, leave that. So that's your need. Okay, so the total spending would be 100 rupees over here, the consumption. Okay, so now what are the factors that actually affect the consumption when we are calculating? So okay, so disposable income, what is disposable income? So disposable income is the income after taxation, after taxation is done, or after the tax amount is cut from your income. So that is disposable income. So when people or the country is poor, the maximum percentage of the disposable income is spent on needs. Okay. um, so more the disposable income, if you have more disposable income, then more purchasing power. So you can buy more products or more goods and services, which will increase the consumption. Okay, so it's disposable income proportional to the purchasing power, proportional to the consumption. Rate of interest. Now, rate of interest is a different kind, it's differently proportional, like inversely proportional. So if ROI basically, like, I hope you understand rate of interest, ROI. Okay, never mind, leave that. If ROI increases, then people will save more in order to earn more money, avoiding spending. Okay, so for example, uh, I'm going to a bank and they are charging me higher interest rate. For example, instead of 2% interest rate, they are charging me 5% of a percent of interest rate. I will obviously want to increase the income revenue of mine, so I will keep my money in the bank. Okay, so so that I can gain more money from that due to higher interest rate. Okay, so I am saving now. If I'm saving that money, I cannot be spending the same money, right? Because it's into savings, so it's mutually exclusive. So I am reducing my spending. This will reduce consumption. Okay, so this is a reduction in consumption. Direct taxes, they are also inversely proportional. So if direct taxes on a person decreases, the disposable income will increase. This is because like I told you, disposable income is the income which is income that you have in hand after cutting the tax amount. Okay, so if the tax amount is decreased, then you will have more disposable income, which again then links to the first point of disposable income. So lower direct tax, lower tax amount cut. Okay, and if lower tax amount cut, then you will have more the disposable income. Disposable income increases, the consumption will increase because you have more purchasing power. So it's a cycle. Well, not basically a cycle, but just it's a chain. Okay, it's a chain. Confidence. Now, what does confidence mean? Like, I know it's a term that is not economic. It's not economic term, but confidence. If consumers are confident that after borrowing they will be able to pay, then they will spend more. Okay, for example, if I'm borrowing $10,000 from a bank and I know, yes, I have the potential to return back the same money with interest, then yes, I will borrow that $10,000. Okay, but if I think that no, out because of my low salary, I cannot repay the loan, or I cannot repay the borrowed money, then obviously I would not borrow or take the loan, which will decrease the consumption. So if there is confidence, people will borrow more. If people borrow more, then they will spend more. If spending increases, obviously the consumption increases. Okay, so it's basically like that. So the all the money changes into your goods and services. Now the second component, which is investment, mostly done by private firms and public as directives. Uh, Investment is a total expenditure done by private sector on a capital. Okay, so it's only by the private sector. I'm so sorry. Investment is a total expenditure done by private sector on capital. Capital is basically all the machineries, all the uh, things that the company has bought in order to produce a particular product. Okay, so that is investment. So now what will affect the investment? First is consumer demand. Okay, so now what do you mean by consumer demand? If the demand increases, okay, for example, if this person over here is let's say he's demanding for a refrigerator. Okay, if he's demanding for refrigerator, and if because of this person there are three more people who are demanding for refrigerator in the same company, then if the demand increases like it did, the private sector will buy more capital, because for example, one one machinery could only produce two refrigerators, but now there are the demand is increased to four, so they will need to equip another machinery to produce that two extra refrigerators, right? So they will invest more. They have invest more uh, in capital which will produce the refrigerator uh, in order to increase the capacity size. Okay, so that's how consumer demand affects investment. I hope this was like a nice example. Rate of interest, again inversely proportional. So private sectors can borrow more to buy capital. When the ROI decreases, this will increase the investment, obviously. So if I'm going to a bank and I'm like, I want a loan, okay, instead of 5% they are charging me only 3%, so I will borrow more money from them. Just so if I borrow more money from them, I can buy more capital. The investment will naturally increase. Okay, if the ROI increases from 2% to 6%, then I will borrow less from the bank and I will spend less on the capital. I will naturally the investment by the company will decrease. Yes, that was rate of interest. I know it's rate of interest is inversely proportional for both consumption and investments. So keep that in mind, okay? Advancement in technology. Don't get confused. Technology. I did not have enough space to write technology, even though there is so much blank space on both left and right. Uh, yeah. So advancement in technology, if raise in productivity of the capital, uh, this will increase the investment in the firm. Okay, so if the capital is more productive, then the companies will invest more into the capital so that they have a good production in a shorter period of time and to match the demand of the people in the market. So that's advancement in technology. Optimism, just like confidence, but uh, just a more fancier word. Uh, if the firm is positive about improving economic conditions, so if the firm is positive about improving economic conditions and increasing consumer demand, the investment is supposed to increase. Okay, so if for example I am company XYZ and I think yes, the economic conditions and the consumer demand are going to increase in this 6 months, so more into I will invest more into capitals capital goods because the consumer demand is going to increase and the company will have to reach up to the demands consumer demand in the market, so the investment is obviously going to increase. Okay, yeah, so that was about investment. The next component of aggregate demand is supposed to be government spending. And government spending. So, government spending is basically the total expenditure on public goods, merit goods like education, healthcare, and defense. Okay, so government, the short form is GOVT and a full stop. That's it. So government spending is a total expenditure on public goods. So all the expenditure done by the government on public goods, merit goods, are basically government spending. That's the component. So the factors that affect the government spending is, so the factors affecting the government spending, first is government policy. So government might want to increase the economic conditions, so they will raise its spending. So when there is an increase in real GDP, that's when the economy flourishes the most. Okay, because there is an economic growth, obviously. So for example, if there is very low consumption, which is basically low demand, if there is very low investments by the companies, then the government actually creates demand in the economy. So that's how government policy affects the government spending as well. Okay, this government policy directly affects the aggregate demand, not really a point which affects the government spending. So yeah, but government spends on policy. So that spending on policy is also a government policy, and the way they spend it in the economy is also considered as government spending through a policy. Okay, government taxing, higher the tax revenue received, then the government spending will increase, obviously. So for example, if there are 10 people in the country, and just for example, okay, there is no country with 10 people in the country. um, for example, there are only 10 people in the country economy, and I am Dhwaj Jain is the government over there. And if I am taxing each person, for example, only $10,000. Okay, well, that's too much, but if I'm taxing them only $10,000 from each, okay, so that would be basically $100,000. Okay, so if I'm doing that, I will get $100,000. Okay, that's the first case. Now in the second case, if I am increasing, uh, so if I am going to increase the taxation rates, and from, instead of charging them $10,000, I am charging them $15,000. I will have 150,000 of tax revenue. So now with the $100,000, I could spend on education and healthcare, but because of the extra $50,000, now I can also spend on defense. So now the government spending has obviously increased. Okay, now they can spend more, right? So the plus $50,000 they can spend. So the government spending obviously increases. These values are too small for taxation rates and all of those. Just it was just an example. Now, what is the demographics of population in the economy? Okay, so if there are more children, then there would be more spending on education. If there are more aged people, then there would be more spending on like healthcare and pension. If there are more unemployed, then spending will increase on unemployment benefits. For example, there are three countries: uh, country X, country Y, and country Z. So XYZ. So country X has a population where 50% of the people are below 18. Okay, they are below 18. Country Y having more than 40% of their population above 50, above 64, let's say above 64. And there are in country Z, there are 55% of people who from the labor force who are unemployed. Okay, so the government spending on each country would differ. Okay, so for example, if 1% of government spending goes to the 1% of people who are unemployed, or who are children, or who are aged people, then country Z would have to spend 50% of its government spending just to provide education to people, students. Okay. Country Y will have to spend 40% of its government spending on basically its aged people, and country Z would have to spend at least 55% on unemployed people for unemployment benefits. Okay, which is really sad. That shouldn't be the case. Uh, well, that was my commentary, like extra point. Never mind. Let's move ahead. Yeah. So I was saying, so the government spending has changed from every for every country, right? XYZ. Now if I say that these were the different time periods, so at time 1, 50% people were children, at time 2, 40% of people were aged, and at time 3, 55% of the workforce is unemployed. So my government spending will change from 50% of spending, it will change to 40% of changing, and then it will change to 55% of spending. So demographic of population, it's a very good point to include in your answers whenever they are saying what are the major effect of major points which affect the aggregate demand. Okay, so that's a very good point. You can say that government spending does affect the aggregate demand by these ways, for like demographic of population, and then explain what it means, government taxing and government policy and all of that. Net export, export minus import, very easy. Net export is the difference between the total national export and total national import. It is affected by the GDP of the country, the GDP of the other countries, relative price and competitiveness. If GDP of the country increases, then the imports are likely to increase and exports are likely to fall. Okay, so that is one of the points that can affect the net export. Okay, so for example, my country, as Malaysia, has an economy which where the economy is flourishing very well. People are having most portions as disposable income, and then many people can spend more on products. Okay, so they will import better quality products, better quality raw material from other, for example, China. They will import more, right? Because they have money, they can buy expensive raw material, they can buy expensive products, right? So imports are likely to increase and obviously exports are likely to fall relatively. Okay, so that's import minus export, export minus import, which is net export. Net export going into negative when the GDP is increasing. Okay, now the GDP of the other country, very simple. If I was first case, I was viewing from Malaysia's point of view, Malaysia's economic point of view. Now if I'm viewing from China's point of view, I will see that, oh, Malaysia's GDP is increasing, let me export more to Malaysia, people will buy. So that's how China's net export is increasing. Okay, because other countries GDP is increasing, they are importing more, and they can import more from China, so China is exporting more. So if China is exporting more, their net export is likely to go into positive, or it's likely to increase. Okay, that's about import and export. So, so that was interchange. That animation was supposed to show, like, change from. Okay, never mind. Let's move on. Oh no, I didn't go anywhere. Thank you for watching part one of aggregate demand and aggregate supply analysis. And I really enjoyed teaching today. Uh, and yeah, it's just gonna be a plain thanks. But do wait for the next two parts of the same sequel of aggregate demand and supply analysis. It's a very good topic. It's a very scoring subtopic, like macroeconomics. Um, you have so many points that you can remember from this topic and this subtopic as macroeconomic uh, policies of by government and actions. Yeah, thank you very much. I really don't have much to say today. So over here you can see on the end screen all my next sequel videos. Okay, bye bye.